Lewis Carroll's Alice's Adventures in Wonderland is a story that gets curiouser and curiouser by each turn of the page. This modern fantasy was originally illustrated by Sir John Tenniel and is set in the Victorian era around the work's original publication date in the 1860s. The story is set in both England and the made-up world of Wonderland. The incredible thing about this particular story is it is wildly different from the average Victorian story, or any story for that matter. This story is made up of many problems, some of which are never solved. It could be argued that the overarching problem is that Alice has fallen asleep and thus entered into a world of mad men, women, and creatures in her dream. Alice struggles to understand Wonderland and its crazy happenings in relation to her knowledge of the world and order. Alice finally realizes that everything in Wonderland is nonsensical and unreal. When Alice finally comes to the realization that the Queen and her soldiers are nothing but playing cards, she is able to wake up from her dream. Alice is the protagonist of this story and is very polite to all that she meets, though the characters of Wonderland are very rude to her. She is curious but reasonable and sensible in comparison to the madness that is Wonderland. She's a perfect example of a Victorian young lady. Carroll does not describe her physical attributes, but the illustrations tell the reader that she is a small, young girl with hair that falls back on her head rather than to the sides. Though the picture is black and white, the reader can make from the shadings that the girl is fair-skinned with light-colored hair. The Cheshire Cat is another primary character of the story, and like all other characters in Wonderland, the Cheshire Cat is mad. However, he is the only Wonderland character to reflect upon and acknowledge his and his peers' insanity. Always smiling, he can vanish bit by bit, leaving behind just a head or even a grin at times. He is a member of the Duchess's household and helps Alice realize that everyone in Wonderland is mad. The Queen of Hearts is another primary character. She is bloodthirsty, constantly calling for people to be beheaded, though she never follows through with the command. She is aggressive and seeks control through threats. Carroll does not describe the Queen in any physical aspects, but from Sir Tenniel's illustrations, the reader can interpret that the Queen is a very large woman, with rough facial features. She is the wife to the King of Hearts and is domineering toward him. She is the antagonist to Alice's protagonist. There are many themes that one can pull from Lewis's bewildering tale, but one theme stands out above all. Life is a meaningless puzzle. Alice is constantly trying to make sense of things in Wonderland, which can represent one's search for meaning in the real world. There may not always be a clear solution to the problems one faces. The point of view of the story is third-person limited, as the narrator knows all of Alice's thoughts and feelings. Carroll's style of writing is unique. He uses fairly simple language, but introduces longer vocabulary words and Victorian customs to the reader. The story is filled with clever puns, metaphors, homophone confusions, and plays on words. The use of poetic language is also seen in Carroll's parodies of classic nursery rhymes and songs, such as Twinkle Twinkle Little Star and his own original nonsensical poetry. When considering this book for a class, a teacher must be aware that though the story is nonsensical and about a very young girl, many of the ideas and events may be difficult for young children to understand because of its excessive use of irony and the Victorian ideals that are no longer a part of our 21st century society. This particular edition comes in a collection of Lewis Carroll stories, including Alice's Adventures in Wonderland and Through the Looking Glass. This book is a thick pink hardcover with strong binding and black, white, and gold accents. The cover illustration by Hugh D'Andre shows one perspective of Alice and various secondary characters from both Alice's Adventures and Through the Looking Glass on the front cover, with an illustration of the Mad Hatter on the back cover. The text, which is in Times New Roman, takes up the majority of the page's white space, with breaks here and there for illustrations. Sir John Tenniel's illustrations were created in ink and are very realistic, detailed, and literal. Sir Tenniel draws exactly that which Carroll describes and employs many lines and cross-hatching. The paper used in this edition is high quality and thick with golden edges. The book in its entirety is very beautiful and makes a great addition to one's bookshelf, though it may not be many readers' first choice due to its large size.
Created using PowToon.